Welcome to the Run for God Run Club, where you will find God in a runner's space.
Welcome to the Run for God Run Club. This is your one stop each week to be motivated and inspired to get off the couch and onto the running trail, where you can in turn inspire others to do the same. Let's learn, laugh, and leap into running together, giving God the glory for what we are able to do in His name. Amen. I am your running host, Dean Thompson. You know, it may seem like a strange time to talk about it, getting outside, but no matter if it's hot, cold, wet, dry, doesn't matter. Getting outside is good for us, and we're going to talk about it. And then I'm going to share a story about, well, some minor transgressions of my youth. Joining me for all of that and more is Run for God founder Mitchell Hollis.
Thanks for having me, Dean. Yeah, it's 40 degrees and raining outside right now. Where did some? I mean, it was 80 degrees, a week ago, a week and a half ago?
Yeah.
Welcome to the South, for sure.
Today's one of those days, you know, I've always said, I don't mind the cold and I don't mind the rain.
Yeah.
But I don't like the cold rain.
Unless you're running, it would probably feel pretty good running out there right now.
Yeah, it's not too bad out there. Yeah. It's not windy. If it's not windy, it's not too bad.
Past couple of days, it was. We made a fire the other night. We got a little campfire area out beside our house, and we made a fire and went out there and we sat for about, 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And the wind was just blowing too bad.
Just too much.
You couldn't even feel the fire.
Yeah.
So, before we get going, let's talk about this week's sponsor. One of our favorites, Front Runner Athletics. Chad and all the team over there. As followers, we are told to put on the whole armor of God. As a runner, you also have gear that you need to put on to protect yourself from injury, aches, and pains. Front Runner Athletics is a family-owned running specialty store that helps fit you with quality gear that'll help you run and not grow weary. They're also longtime supporters of Run for God. Visit Front Runner locally in Chattanooga on Hickson Pike for a complimentary fitting, or online at frontrunnerathletics.com. Mention RFG10 and get a 10% discount. And again, every time we talk about them here lately, we're talking about their online presence, because you can go in there and buy shoes. Which we didn't know, or I didn't know till just a few months ago.
Yeah.
They got a great website. Go check them out. If you don't have a local running store that you patron, go check them out, because those guys really know what they're talking about.
They do, and good folks too. Well, we had this one came from Facebook this past week. It comes from Countdown Mary Pavlik Priolo. 4 down, 44 to go. Week 1 of the #marathon training plan done. I got in 9.3 miles. Plan called for in solidarity with my #sister, who ran the St. Pete Run Fest 5K, 10K challenge. #26.2 coming for you. Trying out some new fueling options. I have not yet mastered the timing, so looking to focus on that over the next several weeks. Today, used Bonk Energy gummies, which were surprisingly good and easy on the stomach. Ate 4 chews at 4 miles with 2 more each at miles 6 and 8. On long runs, less than 10, I normally don't fuel, and for longer runs, I won't start anything until after mile 6. Could be why I lose steam in those upper miles. So, looking to start early and often. We shall see how it goes in the coming weeks. Onward to week 2.
So, just kind of a side note, we've got Countdown Mary.
Yeah.
I've created another name out there. I got a message through, I think it was through the app. There's some things that I do on the back end that a lot of people don't know it's me on the back end, but I help the ladies in the building out sometime with the messaging, and we got a message from Patsy Arnold, and a name that we all know, and I was responding back to her in some kind of, I don't even know what the message was, but I said, Patty. Well, it didn't have my name on it. Well, Patty, evidently she's got a great sense of humor, because she came back that it has an S in it, and so I think Holly went back at her, and they were kind of laughing back and forth, and she said, well, I'll just assure you that it wasn't me or Gay or Angie. And basically threw me under the bus. So I went back and I said, from now on, Patsy, it's Patsy with an S.
Patsy with an S.
We got Countdown Mary and we got Patsy with an S
Yeah.
now. So Patsy, if you're out there, sorry I misspelled the name. It won't happen again because you will forever be Patsy with an S in my heart.
That's awesome. Well, I've seen a bunch of posts over the last few weeks, or last week or two, about people finishing up their half marathons on the Couch to Marathon journey. And so it's really cool to see all of those. And of course, Mary here is talking about the beginning of the marathon training. And she brings up a really important thing here, and something I thought worth parking on for just a minute. If you're on the Couch to Marathon program, up until now, nutrition hasn't been critical.
Sure.
But in a marathon, it is critical.
Yeah.
And so, as she mentioned, she doesn't normally eat anything this early in a run, but she's just experimenting. So it's a great way to do it. Start early, figure it out early, because what we find out is that there are some things that aren't good on our stomach. They don't lay on our stomach well, and they upset it. That you don't want something like that in the middle of a marathon. You got enough to worry about without worrying about an upset stomach on top of the way your legs are going to feel. And so doing it now during these shorter runs and trying to figure out first what sits well on my stomach and what seems to make me feel better, and then second, work on the timing of it.
Yeah, and it's very individualistic. You can't ask your buddy what they do. It's kind of like shoes.
That's right.
It's very individualistic. In triathlon, especially Ironman, you have swim, bike, run, but nutrition, they call it the fourth discipline.
Yeah.
Because nutrition takes more people out of an Ironman than just about anything. Cramps, all kind of, it's the nutrition will really make you bonk. And you're right, is when you get out past that, I don't know, what do you think's the magic number? I say hour and a half ish.
Yes.
When you get out past that, you're going to have to take on nutrition, and that's something you got to practice.
It is. And just, you were mentioning that what works for one doesn't work for another. I remember when, what was it, chicken broth that they have in the Ironman? I remember
chicken broth.
I remember hearing people talk about how great that was.
Oh, it's the greatest. I love it.
So when I was doing my Ironman, I got off my bike. I had run about a mile or two into the run, just getting started on my run, and there was some chicken broth there. I thought, I'm going to try this. Everybody talks about how great it was. And I drank it and spit it out.
Really?
It was kind of cold. It wasn't really warm, and maybe that was part of the problem. Yeah. But I don't know. It did not do well. I didn't
well,
like
the reason they have chicken broth, in case people are wondering why in the world would Ironman have chicken broth, by that time your body is craving sodium.
Yep.
And of course, broth, any kind of broth is just loaded with sodium. Yep. And so, I think it's just, it is so good. That and pickle juice. Pickle juice is another one. It's kind of a strange thing that people drink.
Yep. Well, and don't forget about drinking water and any other electrolytes too. So, that's another thing you need to experiment with, because find out what they're going to have at a marathon that you're going to, and make sure that you practice with it. If you're going to take what they have,
because the different brands are different, can
that's right.
react different with you.
Gatorade versus Powerade versus all the other different. There's a gazillion different things out there these days, and so you got to make sure that it works well on your stomach, because that's the last thing you want to worry about. Yeah,
and if you're going to be out there for a long time, just a rule of thumb is you want to push sugar as far back as you can. So like if you're running, you want to try to take in. A lot of these Endurolite mixes now, they've got all the electrolytes and everything in them, but they don't have a lot of sugar. The problem with Gatorade, if you're going to be out there for a long time, is sugar does tend, for most people, to lead to some GI distress over time. So if, as a rule of thumb, you want to kind of push the sugar back as far as you can, and take on those electrolytes and nutrition in a different form.
Yeah, and don't hear that you don't need sugar at all.
No.
Because you do need sugar as well. So
but that pure, simple sugar, I mean, if you drink straight Gatorade, I remember I used to have to cut it in half, because if you take straight Gatorade when you're really thirsty, it almost tastes like syrup.
Yeah.
The sugariness of it is amplified or magnified more, in a race like that.
And for some people, that leads to serious gastric issues. Yeah. Well, no matter what, isn't it kind of fun to do science experiments on ourselves?
Make you human guinea pig. Yeah.
We had a trivia question from last week, but before I get to last week's trivia question, let me talk about the one from the week before, because I messed up.
Really?
I said that the Everest Marathon is the highest marathon, and on their website they claim to be the highest marathon. But
I went and told several people that, so now I need to go back to these people.
Yes, apparently there is a Kilimanjaro marathon that is less than 1,000 feet, but a little bit higher than the Everest Marathon.
Really?
So, So Kilimanjaro Marathon was actually, because I had a couple of people that, sent their answers in and said Kilimanjaro Marathon. I'm like,
no,
I need to look this up. Yeah, I was thinking they were wrong. Well, it turns out they were right. So,
wow.
If you're out there and you think that men never admit they're wrong, well, I'm admitting it right now. So
good job, Dean.
All right. Here's the question from this past week, though. Who is the youngest ever to win the Olympic 100-meter dash? Of course, the 100-meter dash is probably the most popular event of all events in the Olympics. It's what we think about a lot of times when we think about the Olympics. It's been in the Olympics since the first modern Olympic Games in 1896 in Athens, Greece. And the Olympic record for men is 9.63 seconds. For women, it's 10.61. Of course, neither of those are a world record, but they're very close. The first Olympic 100-meter run, I thought this was interesting, in 1896 was 12.2 seconds. You know what my 100-meter PR is?
What's that?
12.2 seconds.
Really?
Yes. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
You're basically a gold medalist.
Yeah.
You're basically an Olympian.
I was just born 100 years too late. So, and then the first women to run 100 meters, they didn't run. They didn't do athletics at all until 1928. And the first woman that ran it was 13 seconds. So, which brings us to today's answer to the question. The answer to the question is Betty Robinson was the one who won that first one and still today remains the youngest winner of the 100 meters in Olympic history. She was 16 years, 11 months, and 8 days old. So less than 17 years old. The youngest men's winner, if you're interested, is Reggie Walker of South Africa. That came in 1908. He was 19 years, 4 months, and 6 days old. If you're interested in the oldest, for women, that's Fanny Blankers-Koen, I like the name, of the Netherlands in 1948. She was 30. And then Linford Christie, I remember Linford Christie of Great Britain in 1992. He was 32 years old. So Betty Robinson, she was born in Riverdale, Illinois. She was discovered that she could run so fast by her science teacher was also the coach of the team for the high school. And she was missing her train. And so she was running to catch her train. And he saw her running to catch her train and thought, whoa, she can run.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting way to find it. And here's in her first, and it says in Wikipedia her first race, but it seems like it must be like her first international race or something like that, professional race maybe. In her first race, she finished second to the American record holder, Helen Filke, in an indoor 60-meter race. And then the next race, she beat Filke in her second race and equaled the world record in her second race.
Wow.
Although it wasn't recognized because it was wind dated, but that's how fast she ran. And then her third competition was the Olympics. And that was the first time, again, that women ran the 100 meters. But here's the bizarre thing, and this is one of the reasons I bring this up. This came from one of our Run Club members, which I'll mention here in a minute, but this is what it says on Wikipedia. On 28 June 1931, Robinson was involved in a plane crash and was severely injured. Initial reports had her being discovered unconscious in the wreckage, wrongly thought dead by her rescuer. Actually, the man merely thought she was beyond saving. He took her out to Oak Forest Infirmary, locally known as the Poor Farm, because he knew the undertaker. Doctors determined she had suffered severe multiple injuries and she would never race again. It was another 6 months before she could get out of a wheelchair and in 2 years before she could walk normally again. Meanwhile, she missed the 1932 Summer Olympics in her home country. Still unable to kneel for a normal 100-meter start due to the fractures and surgeries in her left leg, Robinson was part of the U.S. team of 4x100-meter relay at the 1936 Summer Olympics. The U.S. team was running behind the heavily favored Germans, but the Germans dropped their baton. Robinson took the lead and handed off the baton to Helen Stevens, resulting in her second Olympic gold medal. Retiring after the Berlin Olympics, Schwartz remained involved in athletics as an official. She worked in a hardware store for many years. In 1977, she was inducted into the USA National Track and Field Hall of Fame. In 1996, she carried the Olympic torch for the Atlanta Olympic Games. She was married. That's, I said Schwartz. That was her married name, and had 2 children. They resided in Glencoe, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago's North Shore. And she died actually in Colorado at the age of 87 from cancer and Alzheimer's disease.
Wow.
So this was sent by Carla Carr, by the way. Appreciate you guys. Every time you send something like this in, first it makes my job easier, but it also gets me a chance to research some stuff and look into things, and it's always fun to do that. So Betty Robinson, very, very interesting lady. They thought she was dead from a plane crash.
That's crazy.
And she not only lives, but winds up running in another Olympics after that too. So pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. So today is Cyber Monday. And if you've been getting the emails, you know that we have pretty much 25% site-wide off. Today is the last day for that. So if you're listening to this podcast on the day it come out, get to runforgod.com. If you haven't gotten the gear that you're wanting, the Christmas presents you're needing to get over there and get that today. You can get 25% off. Also, we've been pounding the drum. We've been sending the emails out. We've been challenging you, daring you. Teach a class this January. Teach a 5K challenge on the 23rd of January. Teach the Couch to Marathon on January the 23rd. We're just challenging you to get outside your comfort zone and teach. Somebody said it the other day, and I said, I make that comment all the time. I think it was one of the young men that are staying with us. I'll talk about them here in just a minute. But they said the best way to learn is to teach. And that's absolutely true. If you want to learn everything there is about this sport, teach a 5K challenge.
It's true.
We wrote this curriculum, 12, 13 years ago now. I still learn something new every time I go through it.
Yeah.
And things are constantly changing and evolving, and we look at things different, especially when you get into the scripture part of it. Those scriptures bring on a whole new meaning every time you look at them. So go to runforgod.com, get logged in, go to the Become a Coach tab, pray about it, think about it, talk to your community, talk to your pastor, whoever you need to talk to, and don't use the excuse, I'm not qualified. Because neither you or I are qualified to be doing what we're doing. It's a calling. Right. We're trying to promote the love of Jesus Christ through a sport that we love. That's simply all we're doing. So I challenge you to do that. The Couch to Marathon, we just mentioned it, starting January 23rd. If you've never run a marathon, it's on your bucket list. We need you to join us. We need you to get a group of friends and join us. We want this to be the biggest class that we've had to date. So go out there and do that.
And we have a recent Thursday night where you and I talked about that.
Right.
And
we'll be making that available through different avenues. So be on the lookout for it. We may have it on the homepage of our website. We haven't figured that out yet. But and if you don't see it, shoot us a message, dean@runforgod.com, and we'll be able to point you in the right direction to get to that link. But yeah, an entire Thursday night, well, that's all we talked about.
Yep.
Was becoming a coach.
Yep.
Social media?
Nope.
Grocery store tabloids?
Nope.
The newspaper?
Not usually.
The national news?
Are you serious?
Is there any media source these days that only shares a positive message? A lot of the media we take in each day can be pretty negative. Why not make the decision right now that your music will only be positive? Sign up for an account at jradio.com today and download the app in your app store with music for every moment and entirely positive Christian message. It'll be nice to hear things going right for a change.
All right, so we're back. And Dean, you've heard me talk about this group before. We have at our church right now a group called Life Action Ministries. And they're at our church this week. And it's a really cool thing. If you've never heard of them, go look them up. Basically, they come in and take over your church. They have about 30 team members. And most of the team members are young people getting started in ministry. They're in their 20s. They have the leader, Steve Canfield, is the lead evangelist guy, incredible speaker. I mean, just incredible speaker. But we are housing two of the young people at our house, Samuel and Noah. You just met them before we came into the podcast. So, young people, what's the first thing I typically pounce on with young people? Phone.
Yep.
Phone. And we did not prep for this. You knew that was my answer. So these two guys come in, and I'm like, we're going to talk about the phone. And Samuel is, I think Samuel is 21, and Noah is 22 or 23. And so I somehow it gets brought up, and I start giving my normal speech about how, we're all just addicted to our phones. And Samuel, we started talking about screen time and how I ask my Wednesday night high schoolers, I go through, he said, I've got all those guys beat. And I said, what is your screen time? Thinking it was going to be way more. He pulls out his phone. He doesn't have a smartphone.
Oh, really?
His phone, he can talk and text. And that wasn't done by his parents. He made the decision several years back.
Wow.
He knew that his phone was becoming a problem, and he threw it in the lake.
Oh, my goodness.
And he went and got it's not even a flip phone. It's like a little block.
Yeah.
And all you can do is talk and text. And so now Samuel's teaching me about the phone.
Yeah.
Social media is once again off my phone.
Yeah.
And I have this strong want. I don't know if it's God talking to me yet, because I just haven't gotten there yet. There's part of me wanting to go get a flip phone now. I know I sound like a bipolar or something on this, but I just go back and forth. But yeah, this is a cool group of guys here.
That's really cool.
But
that's a great
if you've never heard of Life Action, go check them out. It's it's life changing. They've been to our church 5 times now. The last time they were here, they really rocked my world. Actually, with the sermon that he did last night was the same sermon that really rocked my world years ago, and it's about forgiveness, both seeking it and granting it. It's about getting clean in all areas of your life, and I don't know. It's a pretty life changing event.
Well, I don't mean to one up you.
Well, one up me then.
Something pretty cool that happened this week myself. So I get a call Thursday night now, or Sunday night rather. Now, Matthew and Chelsea, my oldest son and his wife. I have another, Caleb and Jessica. Both of those two couples have adopted 8-year-old girls. We also have Daniel and Jill. And Jill has 4 grandchildren. And so those are our grandchildren, basically, but now we've got 2 new adopted grandchildren. Well, Bella is the one that is Matthew and Chelsea's, and she has hopped from, she was in, I want to say, don't quote me on the exact number, but I want to say she was in 7 different homes in the first 6 years of her life. She was just bounced around from home to home. She's a little difficult from a behavior standpoint, but she landed at Matthew and Chelsea's home, and they fell in love with her. There's a bigger story behind all of it, but anyway, she's at their home now, permanently adopted. So I get a call Sunday night from Bella. I don't get calls from Bella. She doesn't call me, but she called me to tell me that she had just been saved.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
that definitely one-ups my story.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome.
She she was laying in bed, and her mom and dad were tucking her in, and she said, I got something I want to say. And she said, I want to get saved right now. And they had been talking about it over the previous month or two. She had a lot of questions, and they had talked about what it meant and all of that stuff, and she had just decided now's the time. And so my son prayed with her right there in her bed, and she accepted Jesus, which brought back memories for me because my son was saved with he and I on our front porch at our house. And so it's really cool to see the chain, right? And hopefully
that's
one day
gotta make you proud.
Yes. And then one day Bella is going to have a child, and it's just an awesome thing. So yeah, just wanted to share that.
That's a legacy, Dean.
Yeah. Well, I saw some recent posts about running inside versus running outside when it gets cold. There's a lot of folks that don't like to run outside when it gets cold. I always prefer to run outside. It has to be really, really horrendous weather for me not to want to run outside. So this story was right up my alley. And it comes from Rhonda Williams, who has submitted a number of stories. Always love her stories.
Yeah.
And this is one more good one. It's called It's Time to Get Outside. My devotion this morning focused on the restorative power of nature. The author pointed out how we hole up in our houses and offices staring at computer and phone screens all day, never venturing outside except to walk to the car. We are increasingly becoming a virtual society. We have lovely pictures of waterfalls and meadows on our computer screens, but when was the last time you saw one in person? We connect with people all the time through email, text, and social media, but how often do we meet to talk face to face? We need to get real. Our parents and grandparents were outside all the time, but our lives are set up to drive us inside instead of out. We have to make an effort to get outside and enjoy all the benefits God has for us in the natural world He created. That's what I love about being a runner. So I decided to use all my senses as I ran that morning to take in the beauty of God's creation. I saw the beauty of the fall leaves and watched them float gently to the ground, sometimes swirling when the breezes caught them. The autumn colors are at their peak right now, and some of the trees seem to glow in the bright sunlight. It prompted me to remember how uplifting and encouraging beauty can be. A smile, a kind word, flowers from a friend, a rainbow after a storm. Thank you, God, for the beauty that surrounds me. I could feel the sun on my face and the breeze blowing through my hair. I could feel the hardness of the sidewalk and the softness of the grass through my shoes as I ran across different surfaces. I thought about how my walk on this earth can be hard at times and how those times are always followed by a softer, gentler walk. Thank you, God, for providing rest and renewal when I need it. I could hear the crunch of leaves under my feet and the rustling of the trees as the breeze blew through them. I could hear the birds chatting up each other and a squirrel scrambling up a tree. Father, please help me to hear your voice clearly so I can walk the path you have for me with confidence. I could smell the earthiness of the leaves piled up under the trees and the freshness of the air. I took a deep, cleansing breath. Life is a gift, even though it can be hard at times. So thank you, Father, for breathing life into my body. Help me to use my body to serve you. Let me be your hands and your feet. I realized when I returned home that the only sense I had not used was taste. So I grabbed an apple from a bowl on the table. As I ate that sweet, delicious fruit, I thought about God's provision through nature. I reflected on how He uses the soil, rain, sun, and even wind to grow food we need to flourish. In addition to our physical needs, He nourishes our soil through the natural world. Nature encourages us to stop, reflect, meditate, and just be. A walk or run outside will calm your restless spirit and restore your faith. It will remind you of the love, care, and provision of your Heavenly Father and help you to refocus on Jesus. It's time to get outside.
You know, there's just some people that can paint a word picture.
Yeah.
And Rhonda, every story she reads, it's like, as you're reading it, you can I could see it. I could smell it. I could taste it. She does an excellent job at putting you into the story. Yeah. So, Rhonda, great job.
Yeah, she does.
Great job.
She does. And I think being out in nature definitely, I mean, she's dead on with this. I've said it a time. Mm-hmm. I've written several stories that allude to this, that just being out in nature just makes you feel closer to God. I mean, It's His creation, right? So it's pretty cool. But, you know, do we ever... It's interesting to focus on all five senses. I don't know if I've ever really done that.
Well, I was as I was reading it, and it's like I could identify with how the concrete feels and the grass and the taste of the apple, seeing the wind swirl the leaf. You know, The funny thing was, and being ready to get a kick out of this, I was picturing myself trying to catch that leaf, because being through the challenge of trying to catch a leaf out there, and that is way harder than you actually think it is. But yeah, I mean,
that's good stuff.
I love those kind of stories.
Yeah, we tend to focus on one sense in particular. that last one she talks about, that taste, right?
Or no, in a run, we get hung up on pain.
On pain, yeah, it's true.
But if we'll put our focus on other things, the pain may subside just a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. How about this scripture? Then God said, let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds. And it was so. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds of the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. That's Genesis 1:11 and then 29 through 30. Plant-based food. You know, it's interesting because we look at this idea of recycling these days, and it's like this new thing. Like over the past 50 years, we've discovered recycling.
Right. God's
the original recycler.
Sure.
I mean, he's the one that puts seeds in fruit so that we'll grow more. Right?
Yeah, well, I mean, think of the life cycle of livestock. I mean, you've got. I don't want to get too graphic on the podcast, but I mean, you have livestock. You take the waste from the livestock; it makes fertilizer. It's used to fertilize the fields that make the grass grow that the livestock eats.
Yeah,
I mean that is what do they call it now? It's not recycling, but you see it with the not the circle of life. They call it something.
Upcycling.
No. It'll hit me here in a
Yeah,
while. Anyway,
yeah.
there's a term for that where it's basically just it's a constant circle going around, and God did that.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm so glad that God put the plant-based diet right in the first chapter of Genesis. Isn't that interesting?
But you know, then along came the new covenant. And it's where God made all foods clean, including meat, Dean. So I saw your notes here, so I was ready for it.
It does say green plant, though. So what does that say about corn and carrots? I'm just wondering. It's
I could probably get on board with that.
Yeah. Here's an interesting thing. Did you know that kudzu, you can eat kudzu?
I did not. I saw your notes, and man, nobody in the Southeast would ever go hungry.
That is true, right? We're all worried about our food supply running out. Well, if kudzu is edible, well, then we're fine.
Because you can put one piece of that in the ground, and within a year's time, it's covering 100 acres.
Oh yeah,
If you don't know what kudzu is, look it up. But
we only have it in the East. There's no kudzu out West. There's one place out in, I think,
and kudzu's not even from America. Where was it?
It was from Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was brought here from Japan as a soil erode because it grows so fast.
You can't kill it.
It grows about a foot a day.
Yeah.
It grows fast. I used to have guinea pigs, and I used to go pick kudzu leaves to feed guinea pigs. So that's where I knew that they were edible because I knew the guinea pigs could eat them. So I wondered, well, what about people? Could people eat them? And sure enough.
Do people actually? I mean, where did you see that? Is it?
Yeah, people do.
Like a recipe? Or?
Yeah, there's kudzu recipes out there.
Really?
So,
I wonder what it tastes like.
Yeah,
like
I
greens?
don't know.
What it tastes like?
It's probably.
Greens,
I would imagine they talked about it being similar to the when you cook it up. It's similar to spinach. So
that's piqued my curiosity.
Yeah, I feel like I want to go check out some kudzu now.
Of course, my luck, I would get some poison ivy mixed in there.
Got to be careful. They look very similar. Yeah. So I don't know. Pretty cool.
I saw a sign the other day. I got to say this. I wasn't going to say it, but I'm going to say it. Holly and I were driving somewhere, and it was in Ringgold. If you're coming the back way from Ringgold home, there's a sign, and it's the Boy Scouts of America. It's advertising the Boy Scouts of America, and it had two leaves. It had one big oak leaf, and then it had a leaf with 3 leaves on it, and it said toilet paper, not toilet paper. Learn the difference. And it was for the Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
One was poison ivy, and one was like an oak leaf or something. So that was a pretty funny billboard.
That's if you have gastric issues on the run and you're doing long runs out in the middle of nowhere, sometimes you better know the difference.
So moving on.
Yeah. Psalm 34:8. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the one who takes refuge in him. Taste and see that the Lord is good. You know, we all have different food preferences. Ours is quite different. But the Bible gets and I think about how we like some things and we don't like some things. For example, I love banana peppers. I could eat banana peppers just one after the other. I love them. I don't like bell peppers at all. I don't want a half a bite of a bell pepper at all. I don't like them. I don't know why. That's just my preference. So we got some stuff we like, some stuff we don't. But here's the thing. God is always good. Every time and to everybody. And so there's no...
At all times.
At all times, yeah.
This verse made me think of the word I was trying to remember, because this verse makes me think of that word, sustainability.
Yeah.
I mean, God is enough. Steve Canfield, during this whole life action thing that we've got going in our church, that's one thing he talked about, I think it was on Sunday night, is God enough? And we were going through Philippians 4:10 through 13, which we talk about being content. And he said that is the true measure of contentment. Is God enough? And if you can ever get to the point where God is enough, you can truly live out those verses in Philippians. And then, you get to the point where I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can be content in all things, through all things, if God is enough. But if God is not enough in your life, that's where contentment flees.
Yeah.
And he is enough. And that's what it's talking about here in Psalms. He's enough.
And if we feel like God isn't enough in our lives, the problem's not on his end.
No.
Yeah. Psalm 23, 1 through 3. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. I guess if I was to think about a nature verse, a verse that made me think about nature, this is probably the one that would just pop in my head. Right. Just the idea of the green pasture and the still waters and it feels. You mentioned with Rhonda and her writing and how it kind of puts you there.
Word picture. Yeah.
The 23rd Psalm really does that. Yeah. It really makes you think. It has a calming effect, I think, and that's what it was meant for. Because that's what David was doing at this time, was he was trying to write something that was calming for him. That's what the 23rd Psalm was all about. And it's all about nature and how nature refreshes our soul. And I think any of us that have gone out and run or walked out in nature, we have felt that at some point. Where I remember when I was working in a manufacturing facility, spent a lot of time in an office, of course, and I can remember days where, it's one problem after another, walking in the door, and you get so tense about all of that stuff. And I can remember days of just walking outside and just taking in a deep breath, and it just felt so
immediately
good, just like that.
Yeah. Well, it leads right into the first question that Rhonda asked here. What do you love most about running? It's funny you said what you just said, because just yesterday I got in front of my computer at, it was a little bit after 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was meeting my buddy Keith to run about 3:45, and I stared at my computer basically the whole day. I had a lot of things I had to get done. It's like a ball and chain, my computer sometimes, because there's things we have to do on these things, but I so hate it sometimes. But you're right. I mean, I got up and I went to run with Keith, and it was like, gosh, this just feels so good. And we were talking about it. I said, I don't see how people sit in front of a computer all day and then they go home and get in front of the TV and sit there. That's enough to drive anybody crazy. And that, to Rhonda's point, that is one of the great gifts of running is it allows you to get away from that in a society that's so fast paced and screen driven. We got to get away from the screen sometimes, because that's where you find your sanity a lot of times in a day that's just insane.
Yeah, you're right. And the cool thing about running is so natural. Like other sports, there's the introduction for cycling. You have a bicycle, you have equipment, you have stuff you have to worry about. With running, it's really, really simple. I mean, running is so. I mean, we look back in history and we used to hunt our food. I mean, it was something we did to hunt our food. And Christopher McDougall talks about this in the book Born to Run, and does a really good job of laying out how our bodies are meant to run. They're naturally formed that way. God made our bodies. The idea of the anatomy and the way we're built, the ability of that we have to sweat, all of the systems that we have are built for long distance running. And so I think that's why running feels so good, and why nature and running go together so well. Right. It's because they're both very, very natural things. And I think this psalm tells us that if we rely on the natural order of things, that includes God, and that He's going to make things better. First question, just like you said, what do you love the most about running?
I think it's exactly what Rhonda said. What we've been talking about, it's getting outside, and whether we know it or not, we all need that, the dopamine. I mean, we all need those things released in our bodies, and I can't think of any other healthier way to do it. Yeah. It's sometimes it's a bad run and you're just, it's horrible, but there's things to learn there. Yeah. But then on those good runs, there's nothing like it. I went out and ran on Saturday. I was doing a longer run, and and maybe this is one of those prayers, I'm conflicted on whether you pray this or not, but God wants all things brought to Him. And I prayed before the run. I said, God, just give me a good run. Just make it smooth. Let me focus on you. And guess what happened? Smooth, felt great. Wasn't crazy fast, but we need those kind of runs sometimes where you just back it down and put your focus where our focus needs to be, and that's on God. And I was thinking back, I don't know, when I've went into a run really with that mindset. Yeah. I don't know how many of those runs have ever turned out bad. Yeah. Now they may not be fast, but in those times, that's not what we need. We need to have those times where we're just focused on God, and that can be through nature, like Rhonda said, or it can be meditating on something you learned the day before at church, or I don't know. There's some, when you have those good runs, there's just nothing like it. Yeah, and there's something to be said for, obviously, that the relaxation of the run, because I think what you run better when you're relaxed. You give that to God, and it's like, I'm open to whatever God's got, and it really relaxes you. This past weekend, I had run a long run 2 weekends ago, and I ran it a little too fast, faster than I really wanted to run it, and I got through with it, and I thought I shouldn't have run that fast, and I was kind of pushing to maintain that pace toward the end of it, and I thought I probably shouldn't have done that. Well, this past weekend, I went out, same distance run, and I was determined. I'm like, I'm not running that fast again. I'm going to be smarter than that. So I went out there, and I purposefully just felt like all I'm going to do is I'm just going to really relax and just enjoy this run. Well, I wound up running only 7 seconds a mile slower than I ran, but I finished it feeling like, man, I could have run so much faster. Because you were relaxed. If I would want to, because I was relaxed. Yeah. And I think with God on our mind, a lot of times we're just more relaxed. Sure. And I think it helps our runs for sure. Of course, I like the solitude of running. That's one of the other things I love about running. I'm an introvert, and so I love people, and I love seeing people. I love that phone call I got from Bella this past. I love all that, but I really like to be alone as well. And so that's one of the best things that I like about running, because I feel like when I'm alone, that's the easiest way to get closer to God, I think. Sure, we can get in a church service and we can listen to worship music and all that, and we can feel really close to God. But I don't know that we ever feel closer to God than when it's just you and God, and He really digs in on you. So, question 2. Do you take time to enjoy your natural surroundings, or are you just passing through on your way indoors? I think this is where I'm glad a couple years ago that I decided to walk. Past 2 years, really, I just walked. And And I still walk some now. In between runs, I'll go out and just walk. And this is one of the great things about walking. You know, with running, usually you got times on your mind, or you're hurting, or you're trying to improve. But walking, it gives you that opportunity just to slow down and take it all in. Because when I started walking, I was walking a lot of the same roads that I've always run. But you see things completely different when you slow down. And I saw things that I never saw before. You know, we always say you see so much more when you run than when you're driving in a car. When you walk, you see way more things than if you're running. You're able to pay attention more, and you're not worried about tripping over that thing on the road by looking off the side of the road. You're able to slow down. So I do, and I like to do it through walking.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Debbie will tell you that I am really bad about not looking around and just being focused on whatever I'm doing. And I have to be purposeful about it to pay attention to what's going on around me a lot of times, because a lot of times I am just going one thing to the next. And sometimes that's an inside thing. I think about Flojo, our dog. You know, she loves to hang out with Debbie and I more than anything else, right? That's her thing, is wherever we are, that's where she wants to be.
There's a sermon right there.
Yeah.
There
is. But like, if I'm going to go outside, and let's say I'm going to go outside and cut the grass, Flo prefers Debbie over me.
Yeah.
Like, during the day, we're both working in the house. Flo's right next to Debbie. She prefers Debbie over me. But if I'm going outside, Flo wants to go.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the same thing with Louie.
Because she loves the outdoors.
Yeah.
And she loves nature. And I think we're just like the dogs.
And does Flo, because I get tickled because Louie does this. I can get up, and if I'm anywhere near the door, he's like doing circles. I mean, like tail wagging. He's just, and dogs just want to go outside. Does Flo do that? I mean, if you get up and you're anywhere near the door, it's like Flo's giving you the cue, like, let's go, get outside, open the door. Yeah. Isn't that funny?
It is funny. And I'll tell you, here's what happens in our house is if I go outside and don't take her with me, then she goes to Debbie and starts whining, wanting to go outside. Yeah. Because Daddy's outside. Yeah. I got to go outside. Yeah. And so, That's funny. But that yearning to be outside, we should all be that way, I think. Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of reasons to be that way too. And the problem is we've got all these distractions indoors now. You know, the TV, the watching YouTube, the video games for a lot of people, and there's so much that keeps us indoors. But as you mentioned, getting back to nature.
Well, it's funny, and I don't know this. We may need to ask Samuel, but the young man that I was just talking about that was here, that's here and has the regular phone. I don't know the exact story, but he was outside when this happened, but he was outside when he threw his phone in the lake. And I could only imagine, because I've been there before. I've never thrown my phone in the lake, but I've been sitting by a campfire before, you know, with friends, and I'm sitting there scrolling on my phone. Yeah. And I just wonder if that's what was going on. And he finally realized, he caught himself like, what are you doing? Well, even outside, to your point, even outside, we're so distracted sometimes by our phones. Yeah. You know, we're outside in nature. We can have friends sitting around a campfire, and what are we doing? Scrolling on our phone. It's true. So, even outside it can be a challenge in today's times. Yeah, it can be.
Last question. Do you have a favorite place to reflect and connect with God outside? Do you have a place?
Mine is the big tree at the church property. Yeah. If you've ever run the Run for God 5K, you know the tree I'm talking about, the big tree at the start line. I'll pull my truck down there. I hadn't done it in a little while, but I'll pull my truck down there and open the Bible and just start reading. Especially when it's nice outside, I'll just roll the windows down in my truck and kind of lean the seat back with the Bible and just sit there and read. And it's quiet. There's always a breeze right there, and I don't know. It's kind of one of my places.
I like anywhere outdoors. I'm kind of like that. But there's one place, Hague Mill Lake. There's a
yeah.
parking lot that's up the high part of the parking lot where you can park
Over
and
the
you
lake.
can look out over the lake, and that's
Yeah.
a place where I kind of feel that same way. Sometimes I'll go up there and work from there because I love that.
Yeah.
But I think with God, I think about our GPS watch. So, the GPS watch, sometimes I'll turn my watch on before I go outside to run. And sometimes it'll get a signal, but a lot of times it won't get the signal until I go outside, right? And God's a lot like that, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's way easier to connect to God when we're outside than it is when we're inside. And and I think sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's hard. Sometimes we go outside and our GPS works like that. Like sometimes I walk out the door and I'm not even to the end of my driveway. And
Already got a signal.
I've got a signal. And then sometimes I got to stand at the end of my driveway to get a signal if I want to start with the signal. And I think that's the way it is with God too. We go out, sometimes we're in nature and it's just an overwhelming sense of God right away. And then sometimes we've got to start paying attention to what's around us and appreciating it, and then God comes
You got to
in.
get past the distractions of the day.
Yeah. So you ever see those people with their GPS watches that hold them way up high? Like that's
I'm the guy that if it's ready or not, I hit start.
Yeah.
Because it does. Nowadays they do a pretty good job. They know where you were when you started. I don't know how, but
They do a pretty good job of being pretty accurate.
yeah, I just hit start and go, and
Yeah.
I'm a lot less anal, I guess is the right word about my. Lane's one of those that
You
he's
won't run
not
without
good-
your watch though.
Well, but like it don't got to be exact for me anymore.
Yeah.
Lane and Landon's. I'm kind of becoming more like Landon, where he don't care if he's got a watch or not. But Lane's the kind if he finishes a run and it's 8.72, he's going to 9. It's got to be an even number, and
That's the triathlete in him, I think.
yeah, I guess.
Do you struggle with motivation to exercise? Are you looking for something that will challenge you and inspire and motivate you? The Run for God Run Club is just what you need to get off the couch and on your way to a fitter, healthier you. Stop trying to get into better shape and do it. With the help and inspiration of thousands of others who are going through the same challenges you face. Whether you're participating in the Couch to Marathon Challenge or just looking for a daily pick-me-up to get active, join the Run for God Run Club today. You can join for as little as 27 cents a day. So what are you waiting for? Get started today at www.runforgod.com.
All right, so we're back, and we've been talking for about an hour, and you haven't asked me a single question about this styrofoam cup
You have a styrofoam cup
sitting here.
Yeah.
And it says, it's got my name at the top, and it says, all I deserve. So I want to tell this story. It'll take me just a minute. But last night, Steve Canfield, the guy that's speaking at our church, he was talking about our expectations as believers. And so many times we put ourselves above others. We are entitled. We hear the word entitled a lot nowadays, and he was talking about as believers, we get that way. We all get that way. And he told this story about it was the deputy Secretary of Defense, and this guy told this story. He was speaking at a church. It was a former deputy Secretary of Defense. I think it's the right wording. Anyway, he went to speak at this conference, and when he was the deputy of the Secretary of Defense, when he went, there was a private jet waiting to take him, and then when he landed, there was a limousine that picked him up, and it took him to this hotel. When we got to the hotel, there was a entourage of people to get his bags and to take him right past the sign-in desk up to his room. And when he got to his room, it was, on the top floor overlooking whatever city it was. And, everything was just done for him. And then the next morning he'd come down and they had breakfast waiting for him. And then they put him in the limousine and took him to this event center where this conference was. And then when he got to the event center, he went into the green room, and with the green room, they had all these different kind of coffees, and they had these nice ceramic mugs, and they handed him this coffee, and then he went out on stage and gave his presentation. Well, because he was a professional in the field of whatever he was talking about, the next year he was asked to come back. But the next year, the administration had changed, and he was no longer the Deputy Secretary of Defense. He was a citizen. And he said the next year, he flew coach to whatever this city was. And when he got there was nobody waiting in the airport. And he got a taxi, and he went to his hotel. He stood in line to check in. He manhandled all of his bags up to the middle part of the skyscraper with a regular room, and the next morning he got down and had the continental breakfast, hailed a taxi, went over, fought the crowd to get in, even though he was one of the presenters, and there was no green room. And he went up and he asked somebody, "Hey, do y'all have any coffee?" And they said, "Yeah, there's a coffee maker right over there. There's some styrofoam cups right next to it." And he was on the stage holding a styrofoam cup. And he said, "You know, what I've come to realize is that all that special treatment was reserved for the office. It wasn't for the person." And he said, as believers, we become entitled. You know, we start to get a taste of what God can do for us, and we come to expect the ceramic mug. And he said, all we deserve is a styrofoam cup.
Yeah.
And man, it just rocked my world, because I do that.
Sure.
You know, we've been in this ministry for 13 years. It should be easier than it is many times.
Yeah.
Nope, it shouldn't.
Wow.
He gave another analogy, and I've got it sitting out in my truck that kind of goes along with this. But if you got my truck right now, there's a crocodile up on the dash. And he said that there's a Angel Falls. Where is Angel Falls?
In Oregon, isn't it?
No, this is somewhere
a different
overseas.
one? Okay.
It's the largest waterfall in the world width-wise. It's like a mile from one side to the other.
Okay, yeah.
Anyway, it goes down, and then it creates this class 4 rapids, I think. It's some of the best rapids in the world. Anyway, when you're doing the rapids down through there, you can take rafting trips and all that. But the guides say, if you fall out, stay in the rapids, because our tendency as humans is to find the easiest place, the calm water. But they said, do not go to the calm water, because we're always looking for the easy, safe place. But when you get to the calm water, that's where the crocodiles are.
Oh.
And it's talking about, and what he was saying was kind of back to this point is, so many times as believers, we want it easy.
Yeah.
We're entitled. We've been doing this a long time. Paul never asked for it to be easy.
No.
He stayed in the rapids. And when we get into the calm waters, I mean, it's so, talk about a word picture. He made it sound so, when we try to find the easy places in life, what tends to creep in? Trouble. Danger. The crocodiles. That's where we need to stay in the turbulent waters. We need to keep the pressure on ourselves, because that's when we work for God. And I don't know, it was just kudos to Steve. I mean, it's several great sermons that he's given so far. But the crocodile and all I deserve, I just love those points, because, you know, it's just like running. I mean, we don't expect running to get easier. In fact, the better we get at it, the more we challenge ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to look at our walk with Christ the same way. We don't need to get to the calm waters. We need to stay in the rapids.
Yeah. I was just thinking about that from a running standpoint. We're not entitled to a good run.
No.
It's great when we have them. Not entitled
But
to
the
it,
bad
though.
runs make us better.
They do.
And I mean, how many times have we talked about this?
Yeah.
And it's like everywhere we go, the analogies are there, but sometimes we just don't get it.
Yeah.
Why don't we just get it?
Yeah.
But
a lot of times we're more satisfied too at the end of that
Absolutely.
difficult run, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a time for Dean's Thoughts, and that's a time when I share something that I've written about the intersection between running and faith. Did you ever get into mischief when you were young?
Me?
Oh, that's right. You were the evil Knievel guy. That's
These guys staying here asked me my testimony the other night, and I said, well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I wasn't always the Run for God guy. Not that the Run for God guy means anything, but I said I was not always that guy. I was always into mischief.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wrote this. It's called Containing Our Excitement. I remember a place called Terra Beach. It was a man-made swimming hole about 200 to 300 meters in diameter with a diving board and platform in the middle. Of course, once a young swimmer went out more than 30 meters out, the water was above our heads. With hundreds of people surrounding the sandy beach on a hot summer day, our parents were worried about our safety if we tried to swim out too far in the crowd. The parents would forbid us to go out to where we could no longer touch the bottom. But we were adventurous boys, so what do you think would happen? Of course, we would find our way out to the platform every time. We couldn't help it. Pulling ourselves up onto that platform and standing there triumphantly looking out over the hundreds of people who weren't as cool as we were was the bomb. The draw of the platform experience was so exciting to us that we were positively giddy about it, and as much as we wanted to obey our parents, we just couldn't help ourselves. I felt the same way a few years ago when I decided to run the number of miles equal to my age on my 53rd birthday. The longest I'd ever run was 30 miles, and I was really excited about the prospect of running 75% more than I had ever run before. Was it a good idea? Well, I don't know. I just wanted to do it. Once the idea entered my head, I couldn't help it. It was Terra Beach all over again. I've had similar running experiences as I towed the line at the Boston Marathon, or when I attempted to break 5 minutes for the mile 40 years after the first time, or when I ran beside Jimmy Carter on a running trail near Emory University many years ago. I could go on, but you get the point. There are so many more things I'd love to accomplish. For example, I want to run a 100-mile race one day. Now, my goals may not be your goals, but there are things you can get pretty excited about. I've seen many people get pretty jacked up about running a marathon, for example. I remember getting a phone call several years ago from a friend of mine. He had called me about 3 years earlier when he was a beginning runner to get some advice. The follow-up phone call was to thank me for challenging him to run a 5K at under 8-minute pace. The excitement of that goal had driven him for 3 years. What do you need to get excited about? What running goal for you is the equivalent to the platform at Terra Beach? You know you have one. We all have those crazy thoughts of doing something outside our comfort zone, but sometimes we're scared to try it. The first time we swam out to the platform at Terra Beach, we were scared, but reaching that platform made it worthwhile. You know something else we should be excited about? Jesus Christ. There's a reason why it's known as the greatest story ever told, because it is. Why don't we look at it for the exciting news it is? Think about it. We should be so excited to share Christ that we can't hold it in. The Christmas story makes the platform at Terra Beach look like going to the dentist. Enthusiasm is a powerful word. There is nothing more exciting than being so enthusiastic that we can't contain it. What if we were super excited about our running or walking goals? Would it change the way we pursued them? It may or may not be a stretch for you to be that excited about running or walking, but the story of Jesus and the need to share it with everyone we meet should be easy. When you think about it, as excited as we were about getting to the platform at Terra Beach, we were just kids. It was easy to get excited about things when we were kids, but why shouldn't we get just excited as adults, especially when it comes to sharing the greatest story ever told?
That's a great story, Dean.
That was a fun place to go.
It sounds like it. It sounds like I would have been right there beside you.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Parents yelling and screaming. You're like, I don't hear them. Why?
Yeah, or underwater. Yeah, stick your head down in the water so you can't hear them.
Yeah. I was that kid.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot like Red Clay Resort.
That's the picture I had in my head when you said. Of course, it's not 200 meters wide, but it's a big area.
Yes, Red Clay Resort is a mini one of these.
Yeah.
And
now Red Clay Resort, it is a spring.
That's a spring
that they have a concrete bottom and turned it into a big lake.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now Terra Beach, I don't think was spring fed. I don't know, honestly. I was a kid at the time, so I don't know, but it was a cool thing, and it was quite a swim to get out there. A swim for a kid.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure if I looked at it today, I go, oh, it's smaller than I thought it was.
Yeah. Ain't that funny how that works?
Yeah. But it's so true, right? We get so excited about things we have on our schedules or the places we're going. I remember when Debbie and I went to Hawaii for the first time, how exciting that was. We get so many things that we can get really, really excited about. And I mentioned some running events. I remember the excitement of our college girls when we flew out to Washington a few years ago, and so a couple of them had never flown before. And watching that excitement was really cool. I mean, the Boston Marathon is so exciting. It is so exciting. It's probably why so many people go out too fast at Boston, because it's so exciting.
Yeah.
At that, and the fact that it's downhill. But the story of Jesus is so much more amazing than any of that stuff.
You know, you know how I am. I mean, Christmas is.
Yeah.
I genuinely am I'm like a little kid when it comes to Christmas, and the majority of it is because it's the birth of Christ. I mean, there's so many things around that, but a lot of it is simply I love the holiday. I love what it stands for. I love the traditions, the pageantry, everything about it. But you and I were just talking this morning, and this is, it's something I can't really explain and put my finger on. All we know is that it happens every year. You know, in the past 8 days, we've had 3 salvations through the Run for God system. Classes are down this time of year. As of today, we're not doing a lot more promotion of our gospel campaigns. That'll start in December. We really put a push through it. But something about this time of year, and I'd always heard the statistic that more people come to know Christ during the Christmas season than any other time. But why is that? Because for us, we haven't done anything different as of today. Like I said, in December we'll start doing the promotions of the gospel campaigns. But as of today, we're just coming into the Christmas season, and we've already seen an uptick in traffic on our Peace with God page. Yeah, and that's so interesting to me. I mean, I know the reason. It's God drawing people to Himself through the birth of His Son. But it's so interesting. It's just fascinating that every year that happens. Every year since we've been doing the gospel campaigns and the Peace with God page, we've seen an uptick. And I have no doubt, come December, we'll have a dramatic uptick in decisions in the Run for God system. And I think whether people know it or not, even they're getting excited. They understand that there's something to be excited about this time of year. Yeah, that's so interesting.
That is interesting. I think it's just the proximity of knowing that story. And I guess you hear the story maybe more often this time of year because people start to talk about Christmas and why Christmas is important and all. Maybe that's part of it. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's exciting.
A few things that happen more around that holiday than any other time during the year. And that's the most positive one of all of them. But why do you think it is that we don't get because it is such a great story, why don't we get excited enough about it we shouldn't want to, we should just be beating doors down. I mean, it's that exciting, and yet we're not. And I mean, I'm guilty. I'm talking to myself. I'm not pointing fingers at all. And I don't know if it's the fear of rejection,
I think it always comes back to fear.
Do you think?
Fear of something.
Fear of something. Yeah.
Rejection, it not going right, saying something wrong, not being able to answer a question. Yeah. I mean, all those things are just lies of the devil put in our head.
Yeah.
I mean, could you get rejected? Sure, but that's not on you.
Yeah.
It's not. We are called to present the gospel, not to save people.
And logically, we know
they're not
that.
rejecting us.
Yeah. Logically, we know that.
Right.
But fear makes
still
us
hurts.
illogical.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's...
Fear's a liar.
Yeah. And we're not a lot different than the Israelites who had
True.
seen and experienced all these things and yet pulled back
Right.
from the great things. So, yeah, maybe we can get that excitement level up this year.
Well, I sure do it with my decorations
Yes,
around
you
here
do.
because I love the cheesy Christmas decorations. So,
You're
and
doing your
they
part.
have been up since I tried to get them up October 31st. My wife, what? No, they were up October 30th. My Christmas decorations were up for Halloween. I think that's right. Anyway, it's the earliest I've been able to pull my wife across the line, and it only happened because she made the mistake of going to the grocery store. She said, I'm going to go to the grocery store tomorrow, and me and the boys looked at each other like, yes, she's going to be gone for like an hour and a half. She comes back, guess what's done? Decorations are up. So,
That's awesome.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yes.
At Run for God, we care about more than just your exercise. We care about your relationship with God, and we believe that the music you listen to while you run can help you build your relationship with God. That's why we partner with J Radio. J Radio offers a variety of positive and Christian playlists to listen to while you run. You can find a playlist that I put together on the Run for God station at J Radio.
All right, every week we share a reason why running is so awesome, and this kind of goes along with some of the things we've talked about today. It's a pretty good social thing, right? Running is a good social activity. It's a good way to get together. It's what's cool about running that is different than maybe some other activities that you could participate in is you can hold a conversation while you're running, and so it makes catching up with somebody. You know, you mentioned your running partner, Keith. He's, you guys get a chance to talk about a lot of stuff because you're just, it's a social thing.
So I gotta give props to Keith on something.
Yeah.
So Friday, we were going to be running on Friday. We're going to do a longer run on Friday. Friday morning, I sent him a text. I say, what time we meeting or whatever the text said. And he sends me a text. He said, I'm going to have to pass today. And it's a picture of him in a hospital bed.
What?
So I put my phone down and I got in the truck and I went to the hospital. And I walk in and he wasn't in there at the time. His wife was in his room. She just laughed when I walked in. And I was like, what's going on? Well, Keith, I think I'd mentioned on here, and he wouldn't mind me mentioning this, but he had a stroke, a minor stroke a few months ago. And so I've been running with him, and he started having some numbness and things, and he just went in to get some tests. But hats off to Keith, because yesterday, Monday, he was back out running
back out
again.
there.
So he got the okay from his doctor, but kudos to him. I mean, a lot of us would have just, I probably need to take a week or 2 or 3 off, but no, not Keith.
True.
He was right back out there kicking my teeth in on the cross country trail yesterday. So
He's a good, positive guy, isn't he?
he is. He sure is.
For sure. Well, I saw where there have been 22 Kenyans who have tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs recently. One of the things I think is interesting about that is that no Ethiopians have tested positive, which is interesting because they're both very running-centric countries. Of course, some people say that it's not really cultural, but it's that the Kenyan system for catching people is much more robust and better, and that's probably why. But it's sad. It's sad to see, but it makes me ask some questions. And of course, the question is, why cheat? I mean, there's some obvious reasons, the financial incentives for people who live in Kenya to become something that there's a financial incentive, right? But so many people are caught. And I thought about it from, the cycling world. When Armstrong, when he admitted he was caught and all of that went down, we realized at that point in time that doping in cycling was way more widespread than we had thought it was at the time. Same thing happened in baseball. There was a lot of denialism, and then we look back now and we go, yeah, that little bubble of time where all those home runs were hit, obviously it was performance enhancing drugs. You can't help but wonder with running how much of that is going on, and you can't help but wonder how much of the lack of Christ in our world helps lead us to that. Because I'll put it this way, if everybody who was doing it were getting caught, then people wouldn't do it, right? If you knew I heard somebody, and this is maybe a horrible example, but I was listening to a guy on a podcast. He said, "Now if I knew I could get away with it, I'd kill that guy." So some guy that had done and he had done a horrific thing, but he was like, if I could get away with it, I would do it. And I think there's a lot of things like that. If we could get away with things, but if we thought we couldn't get away with it, we wouldn't do it. But so many people think they can. And so that makes you think that it's pretty widespread. So I think we've got to focus on getting back to focusing people back toward Christ. And I think some of this doesn't make it go away. Kenya is the most Christian nation on earth, so it doesn't make it go away. But I think that truth and honesty is really important these days, and sometimes we kid ourselves, and that's what they're doing. Right?
Sure.
Well, how about this topic? Much lighter topic and much more interesting, maybe. How do you know you're running an easy pace?
I think for me, the easiest way to know is talking.
Yeah, if you can talk.
Carry on a conversation.
Use the talking thing.
Yeah.
Some people use heart rate to determine easy pace. Some people, of course, run by feel. Some people have a pace chart that they go by, and they run at that pace range no matter what. And I'm not. I just run how I feel.
Sure.
I'm kind of a feel guy. But I saw a pretty in-depth discussion about heart rate. And you know how I feel about heart rate. I think heart rate's good after the fact. I don't like using it during the fact. But there's a lot of people who feel like if you stay in the right heart rate zone, that there's a big benefit to doing that. You think heart rate is a good way to run?
You know me. I do, and it's not for necessarily the reasons you might think. I think a lot of things that we do electronic wise, there's Jack Daniels, there's what's the other, Macmillan, there's heart rate, there's power, there's even power now. Lane has a power meter in his shoe. There's all these things, and I think they're all good, not for the reasons you might think. I think they're all good because you're being intentional.
Yeah.
And you're focusing on trying to become better, and the sheer act of just focusing on something and trying to get better is going to make you better. We can get into the nuances of, is power better than heart rate, or is feel better than power, or all those things, and there's going to be some truths in all those, but all of them are great because they're great tools because it allows us to focus on our craft in a way that we enjoy focusing on it. Some people love the technology side. Some people love the feel side. Some people, but whatever it is, it's going to make you better if you believe it's going to make you better. It's kind of the old thing we used to talk about Lane and wheels on his bike when he was 9 years old. The wheels didn't make him faster, but Lane thought the wheels made him faster. Therefore, the wheels made him faster.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, that's where a lot of it comes from.
Yeah.
The things that make you better.
I just know if I go back and I look at the runs that I've had over the past several weeks, you'll find easy runs in there from 6:45 pace to 8:30 pace. And that's a pretty huge range, right? But I bet if I looked at my heart rate on all of them, I bet my heart rate is fairly similar on all of them. And that seems crazy to think that that's the case. So it makes me think that pace charts maybe are not great. But I think pace charts, the right way to use a pace chart is most of my runs, I think my pace for me, my pace says I should run between like 7:10 and 750 or something like that, somewhere in that that kind of a range. And if you'll look, most of my runs are in that range, just naturally, just not thinking about it and just going out and running. But there's occasionally I'll be faster than that, and occasionally I'll be slower than that. And I think you're right. I think
all of them you can find flaws with.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we should do none of them. You know, just like for the, getting into the 10K and beyond, we have people do the time miles, and we set zones based on those time miles. And are those hard and fast and exact science? No. But it's better than having nothing. Mm-hmm. It creates a framework by which you can work inside that is going to make you better.
Yeah.
Could we educate everybody on, the nuances of heart rate training and power training and get some better results? Maybe, but maybe not. It's the fact, it's going through the exercise of doing things intentional. We talk about it. It's the consistency. It's the consistency of a training plan. We've always said there's 100 ways to get fast.
Yep.
But you got to pick one and go with it and be intentional about it, and you're going to get fast as a result of that. Faster.
That's a good way to put it. And I like the idea of if you can talk when you run, it's a good pace. Yeah. All right. How about a trivia question for this next week? The trivia question is this: what day of the year is the most active for runners? You think you could guess that?
I would think. I don't know. No, I don't know.
Your
one
first
jumps out at me, but I thought, probably not.
Yeah, that was my first thought is, okay, I know the answer to that one, and then you're like, whoa, there's another day or two that might be pretty big too. So if you know the answer to that question, you can send it to dean@runforgod.com. And if you're the first person to answer that correctly, and this one is definitely, I know the answer to this one. And
you're not going to get this one wrong.
Yeah, I'm not going to get this one wrong. Of course, this one is kind of hokey because how do we know how many people are actually out running on a particular day? So, but there is
I bet you Garmin can tell you.
Well, I'll just say this. The answer to this question was found through Strava. It's basically because
nowadays the majority of people use it so they can pick up the trends.
Yeah, according to Strava, this day is the most active. So check it out. Send the answer to dean@runforgod.com. Be the first one and receive a discount code for some merchandise through the Run for God store.
Good stuff.
It's like cash. Okay, our motivational thought of the week for this week is this: at first, they will ask you why you're doing it. Later, they'll ask you how you did it. We see this in Run for God classes all the time, don't we?
All the time, yeah.
I love that quote. And there was no attribution, so apparently nobody really knows who said this first, but it's a good one. A lot of times people are asking the question, the people who are in Run for God class, why in the world are you out there doing that? And then when they do it, they're like, wow, how did you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yep. Just always remember that when you're doing this stuff, you are an inspiration to somebody. Somebody's paying attention, and you're an inspiration to somebody. And that's a pretty cool thing.
Sure.
Yep.
Another good episode, Dean.
Another good one. That's 140 episodes down.
Wow. So that's incredible.
We appreciate all of you. Share the podcast with others, particularly those, if there's somebody out there that doesn't have a relationship with Christ, we would love for them to hear some of the things that are said here, and hopefully God can use that. We just, again, we love you and appreciate every one of you. Now until next week, may God bless every step of every run. Go out there and shine your light.
Good job, Dean.
For more information about the Run for God ministry, go to runforgod.com. If you have questions about your salvation, click on the Peace with God tab. There's nothing more important. Thanks for joining us today.